Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a calculation where we compare buying a property versus renting a property, but in this case we're going to do a property purchase where you bond the property. In other words, you're taking out a loan to buy the property. Let's jump right into it. So firstly, I'm going to discuss what is the video not? What does the video not try to show us? It's not applicable to cash buyers. If you have cash and you have money to buy a property cash outright, there's a different calculation for that. Because in that case, we're going to compare it to investing the money that you would have bought the property for. This is not a rental income property calculation. In other words, it's not going to tell us if it is a good rental income investment. For that, there's a different calculation. What is the goal of this calculator? To determine if you should buy a certain property or rent a certain property of the same value. By same value, it does not mean if your budget is 20,000 Rand per month that your bond should be 20,000 Rand per month. No, what I mean by the same value is a 2.8 million property, for example, might go for 20,000 Rand rent. And in this case, should you rather, for that same class of property, rather buy the property or rent the property? It also determines if and when there's a break-even point where renting the property will be more beneficial than buying the property. First, let's look at the main assumptions. The property value in this case, 2.8 million Rand. The transfer bond and attorney's fees, 206,000 Rand. That's a rounded figure. The net value after initial cost, including deposit, is 2,594. Now, the reason why the transfer bond and attorney's fees is deducted is because this is an amount that you could have invested elsewhere that you now literally paid towards attorney fees and taxes, and it's not recoverable. The loan amount, we will assume a loan amount of 100% of the property price, which is 2.8 million. Annual interest rate at 11.3%. And the reason we use that interest rate is that Uber indicated that they got prime minus 0.45% for the average client in the first quarter of 2023. Thus, prime being 11.75, we deduct 0.45, meaning 11.3 is the figure we're going to use. Amortization period, that's the payment period over which you pay your bond off. In this case, we're going to assume 20-year payment, which is 240 months. Begin date, in other words, when this bond is going to start. Rental income, less agent cost. We're not having a rental income on this property. Remember, this is not the purpose of this calculation. You're going to either live in this property or rent a similar property. So rates, taxes, levies, and insurance, 4,500 Rand. If you look at the bottom, it says notes on client case. So this is an actual property. The client indicated that the rates and taxes on this property is 2,500 Rand. Levies 1,600 Rand and assumed insurance 400 Rand, which totals 4,500. And your monthly bond repayments in this case will be 29,475 Rand. Then we look at the further assumptions. What will the property growth be per annum? Then we look at the rental increase per annum, and then the levy rates and taxes and insurance increases per annum. In other words, that's kind of an inflation figure. Let's discuss the property growth rate. This is based on data from Lightstone Property. They show monthly figures, yearly figures per province, per property class or property type, and the national average is 3.2%. The rental increase per annum is based on data from PayProp, which currently shows 4.2%. And then even though inflation is more than 6% at this stage, 6.8%, we'll put the benefit of the doubt on the property in this case and just make it 6%, because long-term South African inflation seems to be around that figure. So let's go into the rental scenario first before we will compare them to each other. In the rental scenario, you will pay 20,000 Rand per month, which is 240,000 Rand per annum. And as you can see on the left line here, the rent increases every year. By year 5, you'll pay 282,000 rent and so forth. On the right-hand side, you can see the accumulation of rent that you've paid over time. After 10 years, for example, you've paid 2.9 million Rand in rent, and after 20 years, 7.2 million, focusing in this case up until 20 years. Okay, let's go into the purchase side of the property calculation. We're going to go into the detailed side now. It might be a bit confusing, but just bear with me. I'm going to summarize everything in the end as well. It's important for you to know how this works in order for you to understand where these figures are coming from. So month one, you pay 29,000 bond, and after 12 months here, you can see it accumulates to 353,000 bond payments. We're not going to deal with these two columns. These are rental income and accumulated rental income. We're not getting a rental income of this property. Then there's rates, taxes, and levies, 4,500, which we've discussed. And on the right-hand side, you can see it accumulates. After 2 months, it's 9,000. After a year, it's 54,000. And you can see in the next month, after month 12, it goes up by the 6% we've discussed. So then it goes up to 4,700. The cash flow means how much money does the actual property cost us. In year one, it's 33,900 because it's the bond plus the costs. Then you can see in month 13, it goes up after month 12 here. Then accumulated monthly cash flow. This is how much you've spent in total on the property. In other words, how much has left your pocket. And this column shows the property value at any given month. We used the assumed 3.2% growth, which we got from the Lifestone property report earlier. After 12 months, you'll see the property value is now 266,990. Why do we use this lower amount here? Why isn't the property worth more than 2.8 million at that stage? The reason for that is, remember, if we go back to the assumptions, I'm going to highlight it here. The property transfer costs and transfer duty and bond registration cost all cost 206,000 Rand. Let me put that up on the screen again. And the reason we deduct that from the price, again, is it's a sunken cost. It's money that can't be recovered. It's not part of the property value. It could have been invested elsewhere where it could have earned growth or interest. So that's why we reduce it here to give a more realistic view of the actual property value. Let's carry on. In the middle of the screen, you can see this gray line, which represents 60 months or 5 years. You've paid 1.7 million into your bond over this time. You've paid 304,000 Rand towards costs, rates, levies, taxes, and insurance so far, which is now 5,600 Rand per month, not 4,500 Rand anymore. Your total cost per month is 35,000 Rand. If you had rented at this stage, you would have paid 282,932 per annum for rent, which is 23,500 Rand a month. Accumulated monthly cash flow, so what you've spent in total so far is 2 million. On the rental, you would have spent 1.3 million by now. Then your property would be worth about 3 million today. Once again, this is minus that 206,000 Rand in the beginning that we've discussed earlier. We are still on 5 years or 60 months. So how much cash would you have in hand if you would sell the property today? This blue column would have been out of pocket by about 1.5 million. Your bond is 2.55 million outstanding, and you're getting 3 million back from the sale of your house. Remember, the 206 have already been deducted. So you get about 500 in your pocket, but you've spent 2 million Rand in expenses over this time. So you're 1.5 million down. So let's look at the 20-year figure. This is 240 months right here, right above the orange line. You've paid 7 million in bond payments over this time. Currently, your rates and taxes, levies, and insurance is about 13,600 Rand a month. You've paid about 2 million Rand or 1.9 million Rand on those expenses over time. Your cash flow at this stage is 43,000 Rand a month. That's bond plus costs. And on the rental side, it's 524,443 per annum, which equates to 45,000 Rand a month. So the property value that you can sell it for now is 4.8 million Rand. Your bond outstanding will be 0 on this side. In other words, if you sell your property for 4.8 million, you would have spent 4.2 million over this period. In other words, you get 4.8 million cash in your hand, but you've spent 9 million Rand on bond payments and rates and levies and taxes over the years. So I'm going to give a summary now of where it gets more beneficial to buy a property or to rent a property. There's a break-even point where it becomes more beneficial to hold on to a property. Usually it is more beneficial to stay in a property that you bond and live in for longer, because firstly you have to recoup the upfront costs, the transfer costs and bond costs and all of that, in this case 206,000 Rand. On the right hand side, you can see the difference in cash position if you had to sell the property. So year one, you are 258 out of pocket, more than when renting. As you can see, it increases in the beginning, then it decreases slightly. And in year 10, it starts making sense to have purchased the property with a bond. Then it gets better on the property scenario. And by year 20, you've been out of pocket 7.2 million if you had rented, and you are out of pocket 4.2 million if you had purchased. By owning the property, you do have some capital that grows, and that's why the green portion on the right shows you how much more you have if you had to sell the property. So what can you learn from this? Living in a property longer that you've bonded out is better. Don't make rash decisions buying a property if you can rent. If you don't know where your life is going, if you might make changes in the next few years, don't buy a property outright. Try to buy a property that you're going to live in only if you are certain. I hope you enjoyed this video, and remember to like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll see each other soon.